My parents told me she's gonna die anyway, so why waste money? When my daughter needed life-saving surgery, they gave $150,000 to my brother instead, and now I own their house, their debts, and their ruined reputation. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be the type to post here, but the last year has been something else. Between my daughter's diagnosis, my family's betrayal, and the way things spiraled, I ended up seeing a side of people I wish I hadn't. I've been carrying this story around for a while, and I figured if anyone would understand, it'd be you guys. So buckle up because this one starts with desperation and ends with something I never expected. You know how people always say, family will be there when it matters most? Yeah, whoever came up with that line never met my family. 2 months ago, I sat in a freezing doctor's office while he explained, with that rehearsed calm tone doctors use when they know they're detonating your life, that my 7-year-old daughter had a tumor pressing against her brain. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't try soft words. He looked me dead in the eye and said, she needs surgery within 2 months. Without it, she won't make it. I didn't flinch. I didn't break down. I asked the only question that mattered, how much? 70,000, he said, flipping through charts like he was reading me grocery prices. 70 grand. 2 months. That was the timer he just slapped on my daughter's life. Now here's the thing about me. I don't panic, ever. I don't do meltdowns. My brain doesn't go into despair mode. It goes into strategy. Options, calculations. What's the fastest way to close this gap? Insurance? Already tried. Denied. Bank loan? 3 banks, 3 rejections. Side hustles? I was already working nights on top of my day job. The math wasn't adding up no matter how many late nights I crunched the numbers. But one thing was non-negotiable. She was getting that surgery. Period. Which meant, like it or not, I had to look at my last option. My parents. Now, quick background. My parents aren't exactly the kind and selfless type. They live in this delusional little bubble where they think they're the Kennedys of the neighborhood. My dad walks around quoting business advice he clearly pulled off Facebook Reels, and my mom backs him up like he's the second coming of Warren Buffett. They've spent their whole lives worshiping my older brother, the golden child, while treating me like background noise. But this wasn't about me. This was about their granddaughter. And I figured, even entitled people can't ignore life or death, right? That night, I drove over to their house. I didn't grovel. I didn't cry. I walked in, looked my dad straight in the eye and said, I need $70,000. It's for her surgery. She's got 2 months. I'll pay it back every dime. My mom gave me that fake sympathetic face you give someone when you're not actually listening. My dad didn't even lower his newspaper at first. We'll think about it, he finally muttered, like I'd just asked him to co-sign a car loan. I stared at him. Think about it? It's her life. He shrugged. Times are tough. Money doesn't grow on trees. That was it. Conversation over. They went back to their cozy evening like nothing had been said. I didn't argue. I didn't slam the door. I just walked out, jaw locked, because here's something I live by. When people show you who they are, you don't waste time trying to change them. You take notes, you remember, and you use it later. Driving home, the weight of everything hit me. Not panic, not despair, more like an iron bar pressing on my chest. My parents had basically told me my daughter's life wasn't worth their money. And the twisted part? A small part of me still hoped they'd call in a day or two and say, we've thought about it, we'll help. Hope is dangerous. When I walked into our small apartment that night, my daughter was awake in bed, hugging her old stuffed panda. She looked up at me with those big eyes that could slice through armor. Daddy? She whispered. Yeah, kiddo? I sat down on the edge of her bed. Am I gonna die like mommy? That question hit harder than anything the doctor said. It's a big question for a small kid. I leaned in, smoothed her hair back, and said gently, no, honey. You're going to grow up and become a beautiful young girl. She smiled a little, still clutching her panda. Promise? I nodded once. I promise. Daddy always keeps his promises. She believed me. And in that moment, that belief wasn't just comfort. It was fuel. When she drifted off, I sat there for a while, staring at the ceiling. My parents' words kept replaying in my head. We'll think about it. Think about it? Number. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for them. If I had to crawl through broken glass to make that $70,000, I'd do it. But the crack of hope I left open, the thought that maybe family would step up, was about to burn me worse than anything. Because while I was breaking myself to save my daughter, my family was already plotting something else entirely. Something that would make me realize just how delusional, entitled, and ignorant they really were. And when I found out, it didn't just kill whatever trust I had left. It lit the fuse for everything that came after. The setup was almost laughable. A week after my parents brushed me off, they called, voices sugary sweet, inviting me to dinner. Important news, they said. Big family update. I should have known better, but that flicker of hope is hard to kill. Maybe they had come to their senses. Maybe this was their way of saying, we'll cover the surgery. So I went. When I walked into their house, it was staged like some kind of event. Candles, a spread of store-bought food, wine bottles open, my dad in a button-down, my mom smiling like she was hosting royalty, and my brother, already smirking, swirling a glass like he was celebrating. There he is, my brother said, loud, fake cheerful. Perfect timing. I sat down, kept my face neutral. My mom raised her glass. We wanted to share wonderful news. Your father and I decided to make a major investment. My brother stood, puffing his chest. Mom and Dad gave me $150,000 to launch my business project. I'm officially funded. They all clinked glasses, laughing and cheering like they'd just announced a Nobel Prize. I stared at them, then said flatly, "Wait, you gave him $150,000?" My dad smirked. That's right. He has vision. He's going to build something real. I leaned forward, voice low and sharp. You told me last week you'd think about helping with my daughter's surgery. She needs 70. 70. That's not even half of what you just threw at him. Did you even consider it? The table went quiet for half a second. My brother broke it with a chuckle. Come on, man. You can't compare a medical bill to an actual investment. One is an asset. The other is just an expense. My mom nodded, sipping her wine. Sweetheart, we sympathize with you. We really do. But you have to be realistic. She's sick. And even if you spend that money, who's to say it even works? Why waste it when we can help your brother create something that lasts? I froze. My jaw tightened. Are you saying my daughter isn't worth it? My dad finally set his glass down, looking straight at me. She's going to die anyway, son. The doctors just won't admit it. Better to invest in something with actual returns than throw money at a lost cause. That was it. The mask came off. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so insane I needed to release it somehow. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. You know, I came here thinking maybe, just maybe, you had a shred of decency left. Instead, you're celebrating funding your golden boy while writing off your granddaughter as bad business. You're not investors. You're clowns. My brother's smug grin cracked. Don't talk to them like that. They made the smart choice. Smart choice? I snapped back. You're 35 and still living off their wallet. You've never built a damn thing in your life. You think this makes you some kind of mogul? All it makes you is a parasite with a bigger allowance. My mom gasped like I'd cursed in church. My dad's face went red. Watch your mouth. You're ungrateful. You come here with your hand out, and when we choose to support someone who actually deserves it, you insult us? I leaned across the table, calm but razor sharp. Deserves it? My daughter's fighting for her life, and you call that undeserving? You're delusional. You're so obsessed with playing kingmakers that you can't even see the rot you've raised in him, or the rot in yourselves. For the first time, they didn't have a comeback. My brother muttered, "You're just jealous," under his breath. But even he didn't sound convinced. I stood, tossed my napkin onto the table. Enjoy your little toast. Just remember, when she pulls through, and when I rebuild from this, you're going to wish you hadn't said half the things you just said. Because I don't forget. I turned toward the door. My mom called after me, voice shaking, "You'll regret disrespecting this family." I looked over my shoulder. No, you'll regret underestimating me. Then I left. When I got home, my daughter was still awake, sitting up in bed with her panda. How was dinner? She asked softly. I sat beside her, kissed her forehead. It was exactly what I needed. Did they help? She whispered. I shook my head. No, but don't worry. Daddy's got this. Her little hand squeezed mine. Promise? I promise, I said. And unlike them, when I make a promise, I keep it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at bills, replaying my dad's words over and over. She's going to die anyway. That was the moment the fuse didn't just light. It roared. I wasn't just saving my daughter anymore. I was preparing to burn down the empire of ignorance and entitlement they'd built around themselves. And when I was done, they'd wish they'd treated 70 grand like the best investment they ever could have made. But at that point, I was running out of time. The doctor's deadline wasn't going to wait for my family to grow a conscience. My daughter needed surgery, and I had to make a move fast. The only real asset I had left was my stake in a small construction supply business I'd built with 2 friends years back. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I'd poured sweat into it. Long hours, weekends, late night runs to meet clients. That business was my safety net, my long-term play for my daughter's future. And now I had to gut it. I went to my partners and told them I needed out. One of them, Greg, tried to talk me down. Man, don't do this. We'll figure out another way. I shook my head. There is no other way. She needs the surgery. The doctors aren't bluffing. Greg looked sick but nodded. The other guy, Todd, was already running numbers in his head. All right, but you're going to take a hit. Fast sales don't pay fair. That was an understatement. Here's where my dad slithered back in. He helpfully said he knew a guy who specialized in fast cash deals. He's a friend of the family. Old school. Handles things quietly. You'll get paid in a week. I should have smelled it. Hell, I did smell it. But desperation has a way of muting your instincts. I couldn't risk weeks of back and forth with brokers. Every day was another day my daughter's tumor pressed deeper into her brain. So I agreed. Selling real estate takes weeks, and I didn't have that. I offloaded the business stake for fast cash, then listed the apartment to sell after the surgery. The deal moved lightning fast, which should have been another red flag. Paperwork shoved in front of me. Numbers way below market value. My share of the business was worth at least $200,000. I walked away with 87. It was a gut punch, but it was cash in hand. Enough to pay the surgeon, enough to get her into that operating room. That night, while my daughter clutched her Panda and asked if she could bring it with her to the hospital, I told her yes, and I signed the final documents. The surgery day was hell. 8 hours pacing the sterile hospital hallway. Every beep of the monitors behind those doors driving nails into my brain. When the doctor finally came out and said, "We got it," I exhaled for the first time in weeks. She survived. That was all that mattered. But victory felt tainted, because while I should have been celebrating, I kept replaying the sale in my head. The buyer had barely looked me in the eye. The paperwork was sloppy, and my dad had pushed him too hard, like he wanted the deal done yesterday. 2 weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the sale documents out of the folder and ran the buyer's name through public records. What I found made my stomach twist. The buyer wasn't some random businessman. He was a family friend I vaguely remembered from cookouts years back. One of those guys always bragging about cash deals and shady property flips. And here's the kicker. I stumbled across a transaction filed right after the sale. A consulting fee listed as $20,000. The recipient? My brother. My pulse spiked. I dug further and found another transfer. 10 grand. Straight into my parents' joint account. That's when it clicked. It wasn't just a lowball deal, it was a setup. My dad had funneled me straight into a shark's mouth, and my own family had taken a finder's fee while I was drowning. They didn't just refuse to help me, they profited off my desperation. I sat there staring at the papers, hands shaking, but not from sadness, from anger. White-hot, calculated anger. They celebrated my brother's business project with $150,000, then lined their pockets with 30 more off my back. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a hospital cot, living on vending machine coffee, praying my daughter would wake up and smile at me again. That was the day something inside me snapped. Not my resolve, my naivety. Up until then, some part of me still thought, they're family. Deep down, they'll do the right thing. But now I saw the truth. They weren't blind. They weren't mistaken. They were predators. Entitled, greedy, delusional predators. And predators don't change. I stopped seeing them as my parents and brother. From that day forward, they were just targets. The law wasn't going to save me. Contracts had signatures. Finder's fees weren't illegal. No lawyer was going to touch this without draining me dry. So I started teaching myself. Late nights after my daughter fell asleep, I opened my laptop and dug through public records. Mortgages, liens, lawsuits, property histories. I devoured it all. I signed up for free courses, read forums, learned how money actually moved when people thought no one was watching. I wasn't going to cry about losing my business. I wasn't going to waste time begging them to make it right. I was going to learn their weaknesses. Every debt, every fake investment, every overextended dollar. And when I was ready, I was going to turn every single one of those weaknesses against them. The surgery saved my daughter's life. The scam woke me up. And together, those two things lit the fire that was going to burn their empire to the ground. Up until then, my plan was just survival. Work myself into the ground, scrape together every dollar, maybe claw back some kind of stability for my daughter. It wasn't glamorous, but it was all I had. Then the letter came. It looked ordinary. Plain envelope, return address from a law office I didn't recognize. I opened it at the kitchen table while my daughter was upstairs coloring, and my whole world shifted in 5 minutes flat. It was from my late wife's father's attorney. The old man had passed months earlier. He wasn't flashy about anything. He never had sons, and his daughter, my wife, was everything to him. When she died, he never really recovered. But what he left behind, I wasn't ready for. The lawyer explained his estate was finalized. Since my wife was his only child, everything went to me and my daughter. First, the house. Paid off. 2 stories, decent yard, solid neighborhood. And then, the savings. A personal account with a balance of $850,000. I had to read the number 3 times. 850 grand. Sitting in an account that was now mine. Tucked inside the folder was a note in his handwriting. It was shaky, but the message was steady. I know life without my daughter has been heavy. I can't take that pain away. Take that. But I can give you the tools to protect my granddaughter. Take the house. Take the savings. Use them to build her future. This is my last gift. For a second, my chest locked up. Not out of weakness, out of pure contrast. My own parents had called my daughter a waste of money. But here was her grandfather, making sure she'd never be without a home or stability again. My daughter wandered down the stairs, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, what's that?" I swallowed, folded the note, and smiled. "It's from Grandpa. He gave us a new home." Her eyes widened. "A real house? With stairs?" "Yeah, kiddo," I said. "With stairs." We moved in within a week. The place smelled like old wood and dust, but it was solid. She picked the room with the biggest window and plastered her crayon drawings on the wall. She put her panda on the windowsill like a guard. I set up my stuff in the spare room. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel like it was crushing us. That house wasn't just walls. It was proof. Proof that somebody at least cared about her future. And I swore I'd never sell it, never risk it. This was hers. Always. But the savings? That was different. That wasn't just money. That was a war chest. Right after the surgery, I listed my old apartment. It closed a few weeks later, and I added that cash to the pile. Suddenly, I was sitting on close to $900,000. The kind of capital that changes everything. And I knew exactly where to aim it. I didn't run out and blow it on cars or vacations. I treated it like ammunition. Every dollar was a bullet, and I was loading a gun with their names on it. At night, after my daughter went to bed upstairs, I turned the living room into a war room. Laptop open, papers spread across the coffee table. I dug into public records, mortgage filings, tax liens. It turns out, once you know where to look, people's financial skeletons are just lying there in plain sight. And my family? They had closets full of them. My parents weren't sitting on wealth. They were drowning in loans. A second mortgage they were already laid on. Credit lines pushed to the max. Bills stacking up faster than they could hide them. My brother's business project? Already falling apart. Contractors chasing him for unpaid invoices. Suppliers threatening lawsuits. His little empire was a house of cards. All that bragging, all those toasts, built on nothing. So I went hunting. I reached out to small lending firms, the kind that buy and sell distressed assets. I introduced myself as an investor interested in bad debt portfolios. They were more than happy to show me files of delinquent accounts. And there it was. My parents, my brother, missed payments, overdue balances, foreclosure notices waiting to happen. I started buying, quietly, piece by piece. First, I picked up their second mortgage. Then later, I grabbed the senior note when the bank decided to unload it at a discount. By then, they were already months behind. To them, it looked like the same nameless creditors breathing down their necks. What they didn't know was that those letters, those threats, those penalties, they were mine. I didn't rush it. I wasn't desperate anymore. I had time. I had patience. I could sit in my new house, my daughter safe upstairs, while their rope got tighter every month. They had called my daughter a lost cause. Now I held their cause, their house, their debts, their golden boy's failing empire. Her grandfather's last act of love had given me everything I needed to dismantle them, and I was going to use every last cent. Meanwhile, my brother was busy playing king. If you believed his social media feed, he was already a millionaire. New car every other week, dinners at restaurants where the check probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, rooftop selfies with cheap champagne labeled as Dom. My parents reposted everything, acting like he was the second coming of Rockefeller. In reality, I knew exactly what it was. Smoke and mirrors. The new car was a lease with payments already overdue. His so-called office was a glorified sublet with an eviction notice pinned to the door when you looked closely. The business project he bragged about was a bonfire of cash, with contractors filing complaints because he wasn't paying his bills. I had receipts. Literal ones. I pulled property filings, credit histories, and even some lawsuit records. Every screenshot, every document, every post he made went into a folder I kept neatly labeled. A digital guillotine waiting to drop. But the beauty of it? Nobody else knew. To the outside world, he was the prodigy, the genius, the one who made it. My parents clung to that image like it was oxygen. At family get-togethers, they'd beam with pride. Our son is building something incredible, my mom would say. You should see his investors, my dad would add. Then they'd glance at me with that same condescending smirk they'd worn my entire life. If only you had your brother's vision. I'd just smile back. Because what they didn't realize was that I did have vision. Mine just didn't involve selfies and rented suits. Mine involved legal notices with their names on them. It didn't stop with my parents. My brother started running his mouth to the rest of the family. Cousins, uncles, even neighbors got dragged into his circus. He convinced them to invest in his project, promising sky-high returns. Ground floor opportunity, he called it. Family wealth for generations. Some of them bought in. I heard about one uncle pulling out part of his retirement fund. A cousin wired him $20,000. Even the old neighbor across the street chipped in a small stake. And why wouldn't they? My parents vouched for him, swore he was a genius. They painted me as the bitter one, the failure, the guy who never understood real business. I didn't stop them. Not yet. If they wanted to dump their money into my brother's black hole, fine. Every dollar he swallowed was just more weight dragging him under. Behind the curtain, it was already falling apart. I could see it in the filings. Payment notices turning red. Interest charges snowballing. Creditors marking his accounts as delinquent. I had copies of every one of them. And yet, he doubled down. That's the thing about people like him. When the foundation cracks, they paint the walls instead of fixing the floor. He started posting motivational quotes about trusting the process and temporary setbacks. But he bragged about meetings that never happened and clients that didn't exist. I sat in my war room, her grandfather's house, now my fortress, with my laptop open, flipping between his Instagram feed and the foreclosure notices with his name on them. The contrast was laughable. One night, while my daughter was asleep upstairs, I spread everything out across the table. Bank statements, screenshots, debt files, legal filings. It looked like the blueprint of a collapse. And it was all heading toward one inevitable outcome: ruin. The best part? I didn't even need to touch it. His arrogance was doing all the heavy lifting for me. But I wasn't idle. I was careful, strategic. I documented everything. Screenshots of every flashy post, paired with proof of every unpaid bill. Side by side, they told a story no one could deny once I released it. My parents, meanwhile, acted like royalty. They bragged to neighbors, hosted dinners where they paraded him around, toasted his success. They looked down on me as if I was invisible, and I let them, because the longer they believed their fantasy, the harder the crash would be. Every insult they threw, every time they told me I should learn from my brother, every sideways glance at family events was fuel. They even started leaving voicemails calling me ungrateful, promising they'd ruin me if I kept exposing their prodigy. I saved every single one. I didn't argue, I didn't fight, I just smiled, nodded, and quietly tightened the leash around their necks. Because here's the truth. Revenge doesn't always look like screaming or punching walls. Sometimes it looks like silence, like patience, like sitting in the dark with a folder full of receipts while your enemies toast their own downfall. The cracks were spreading. Investors were whispering. Suppliers were threatening lawsuits. Payments were bouncing. My brother was scrambling to cover holes he couldn't fill, while still posting online like everything was perfect. And me? I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms, and waited. The predator doesn't need to chase. The prey always trips over its own feet. By the time I was done, the whole neighborhood would know the truth. And my family, the ones who called my daughter a lost cause, would be standing in the rubble of the empire they thought they built. I closed the folder that night, smiled to myself, and whispered, "Almost time." The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures splitting wide open. My brother's so-called empire was starting to eat itself alive. First came the lawsuits. Contractors filed complaints for unpaid work. Suppliers demanded invoices cleared. Investors who had been promised guaranteed returns were suddenly showing up with lawyers. Then came the silence. His social media, once a non-stop feed of rented cars, rooftop dinners, and motivational quotes, went dark. No more champagne selfies, no more hashtags about the grind, just silence. People noticed. Neighbors who had once nodded proudly when my parents boasted now whispered in hushed tones. Cousins who had poured their savings into his vision started making angry calls. My phone lit up more than once from people asking if I'd heard anything. I didn't answer. Not yet. The real fireworks came when the first official foreclosure notices hit my parents' mailbox. That second mortgage they'd been juggling? The one I quietly bought up? Yeah. My lawyer sent the letter. Pay or lose the house. They didn't pay. They couldn't. By then, I had everything lined up. Screenshots of my brother's lavish posts, copies of unpaid bills, court filings with his name on them, bank notices, the finder's fee scam from when they'd gutted me on my business sale. It was a neat little portfolio. Every lie paired with the truth, every brag next to the bill he ignored. I didn't blast it all at once. I leaked it slowly, methodically. First, I dropped screenshots in the family WhatsApp group, my brother posting about buying a car side by side with documents showing the lease default. Silence followed. Then I sent copies of lawsuits directly to the cousins who had invested. Thought you should know where your money went. I didn't even have to explain. The receipts spoke louder than I ever could. The explosion was nuclear. Relatives turned on my parents overnight. Neighbors who once clapped at their dinner toasts now crossed the street to avoid them. The golden boy was exposed for what he was, a parasite burning through other people's money. And my parents? They scrambled. The first call came from my mom. Sweetheart, we need to talk. Your brother's had some setbacks. Setbacks? I said, leaning back in my chair. You mean fraud? Lies? Unpaid debts? She sniffled. He just needs time. You've been doing well, haven't you? You could help him out. I laughed. Why would I put my money into something failing? That's not an investment. The silence on her end was delicious. That was their line. Their exact words when I begged them for help with my daughter's surgery. Hearing it thrown back at them, it must have stung like acid. The next call was from my dad. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Son, listen to me. We're family. Families help each other. We're about to lose everything. I smirked into the phone. Sounds familiar. Didn't you tell me family isn't about handouts? That real men sell what they have to survive? Guess you better find a buyer quick. His voice rose desperate now. Don't do this. Think of your brother. Think of us. I cut him off. You didn't think of my daughter when she was on an operating table with a tumor in her head. You thought of return on investment. And now you're just bad stock. Click. They didn't stop there. My brother showed up at my door 2 nights later. No car this time. No smug grin. Just bags under his eyes and desperation dripping off him. You set me up, he hissed. You sabotaged me. Everyone's turning on me because of you. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. No, they're turning on you because you're a fraud. All I did was hold up the mirror. He shoved a finger in my chest. You ruined me. I smirked. No, you ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it. He muttered something about lawyers and stormed off, but I could tell it was all bark. He didn't have a dime left to fight with. Once I held both liens, it was just a waiting game. Months of notices, filings, and trustee sale dates ticked by until the foreclosure clock ran out. Then it all moved forward like clockwork. Every missed payment was another nail in their coffin. And every notice had my fingerprints on it, even if they didn't realize it yet. But they were starting to suspect. My dad called again, voice lower this time. It's you, isn't it? You're behind this. I let the silence hang for a beat, then said, If I were, would you be surprised? He didn't answer. He just breathed heavy, then hung up. Words spread faster than I could have imagined. The same neighbors who once toasted with them were now gossiping at the grocery store about how the great investor family had lost it all. Extended family members cut contact completely. The golden boy wasn't golden anymore. He was just broke. And my parents? They were standing right beside him in the wreckage. The night before the final foreclosure judgment, my mom tried one last time. She came to the house, my house, the one my late wife's father left us, and knocked like a beggar. My daughter was upstairs, so I stepped outside. Her eyes were red, her voice cracking. Please, don't let them take the house. We raised you there. We gave you everything. I stared at her. You gave me nothing. You stole from me when my daughter needed you most. And now you want mercy? Tears rolled down her cheeks. We made mistakes, but this is our home. I pulled the foreclosure notice from my pocket, the one with my name listed as the creditor, and handed it to her. Not anymore. It's mine. She read it, and her face went pale. You? Yeah, I said coldly. I own your debt. I own your house. And tomorrow you'll be standing on the lawn while the neighbors watch. She sobbed. How could you do this to your own family? I leaned in, my voice low and calm. Family is supposed to protect each other. You called my daughter a waste of money. That's when you stopped being family. This is just business. I turned, walked inside, and closed the door. When the order finally hit after the sale, the foreclosure was official. The eviction date got set. My parents and brother finally knew the truth. The failure they mocked, the lost cause they dismissed, was the one holding their leash. And soon, they'd be standing on the curb, watching their empire collapse around them. After the sale wrapped up and the order posted, the eviction date finally landed. Clear skies that morning, the kind of day where the world dares you to pay attention, where the world feels fresh, sharp, like it's daring you to pay attention. I sat in my car across the street, coffee in hand, watching as the moving trucks pulled up to my parents' driveway. A sheriff's deputy nailed the official notice to the front door. Neighbors started trickling out one by one. Some pretended to check their mail. Others leaned against fences, phones in hand. Everyone knew what was happening. This wasn't just paperwork. This was a spectacle. By the time my parents' car rolled up, half the block was watching. They pulled in laughing, shopping bags on the back seat, my brother in the passenger seat like a king without a crown. The laughter died the second they saw their furniture stacked on the lawn. I'll never forget the look on my dad's face. First confusion, then denial, then raw panic as he stormed toward the front door and ripped the paper off. His hands froze when his eyes landed on the name of the creditor. My name. He staggered back like the paper had burned him. My mom dropped her bag, groceries spilling across the driveway. My brother's face twisted from shock to fury in seconds. "You!" he roared when he spotted me across the street. "You did this!" He lunged, but two neighbors stepped between us, holding him back. Phones kept recording. This wasn't just my revenge. It was a neighborhood show, and the stars of the meltdown had finally arrived. My mom collapsed against the car, sobbing. "How could you do this? Everyone is watching." I sipped my coffee, calm as stone. "Funny. Everyone watched when you toasted him with 150 grand while calling my daughter a waste of money." Gasps rippled through the neighbors. People whispered. Some shook their heads. Others laughed bitterly. The golden family image my parents had paraded for years was dissolving in front of them. My dad tried one last bluff, his voice breaking. "Son, this is still our home. We raised you here. You can't take that away." I walked across the street, folder in hand, calm, slow. The cameras followed. I handed him the papers, all neatly clipped together. Proof of the finder's fee scam. Proof of their debts. Proof of every threat, every lie, every attempt to destroy me. "This isn't your home," I said, my voice low but sharp enough to cut. "You forfeited that the day you sold me out and cashed in on my desperation. Now it's just property, and I own it." My brother shouted, "You're a monster!" I smirked. "No, I just learned from the best." Silence. Neighbors stared. My mom's sobs turned into wails. My dad dropped onto the curb like his knees gave out. My brother kept thrashing, but nobody moved to help him. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just a liar exposed under sunlight. I turned, showed the crowd my phone, played the recording of my brother, calling my daughter an expense, played the voicemail where they threatened to ruin me. Gasps again. People muttered. The final nail in their social coffin was hammered in. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to argue. The truth did all the work. I handed my dad one last item, a folded pamphlet, the shelter brochure I'd picked up at Legal Aid the night I signed the sale. I kept it in my pocket ever since, a reminder of just how low they'd pushed me. "You remember this place?" I asked. $10 a night, the same roof I slept under when you called her a lost cause. Might be a good fit for all of you now." He stared at it, trembling. My mom tried to snatch it away, but I pulled it back, tucked it into his shirt pocket myself. "This is where you belong," I said flatly, "among people who know what it feels like to have nothing. Because that's all you have left." I walked away before they could answer. Behind me, their shouting turned to silence. Phones kept filming. Neighbors whispered. Some laughed openly. Their empire didn't collapse quietly. It collapsed on a stage, with everyone watching. Weeks later, I stood in the yard of our house. Her grandfather's place. The one I fixed up using the inheritance, plus what I got from selling their foreclosed property. My daughter kicked a soccer ball across the grass, laughing in the sunlight. She didn't ask about her grandparents anymore. Kids are smart. She knew they weren't worth keeping. Word around the extended family was brutal. Cousins who lost money in my brother's business cut them off completely. My aunt still spits his name like poison. Neighbors turned their backs in the grocery store. Their phones don't ring anymore, except with debt collectors. And me? I don't lose sleep over it. They tried to destroy me when I was weakest. They cashed in on my pain. They called my daughter worthless. Now they sit in borrowed rooms, broke, humiliated, blamed by everyone who once cheered for them. They built their empire on my ruin. I built my peace on theirs.